Alright, sup everybody, welcome back to the Path of Rage, and today we have another update on Star Citizen, because as of the recording of this video, so prior to the day you're actually watching this, CIG dropped another 3.24 patch to the Evocati. So we're going to get into some patch notes and my experience with this patch so far, especially compared to the one a couple of days ago. Let's get stuck in. So yesterday's patch was still focused on the same testing feedback, which was the personal and instance hangars, freight elevators, storage access, hover trolleys, and hangar decorations. Now, they still had a bunch of known issues. A few of those were one that was a really high chance, and I saw this a lot on all of the servers I was on and in the Evo chat. Personal hangars were not opening when you'd request takeoff and landing if you were on long enough to actually get that far. The item banks and the freight elevators would dramatically drop frame rates if players owned a ton of items, especially if you called them up. One of the things that I kept seeing in chats was that people kept trying to split items in their inventory, and once they did that and they started getting more and more inventory, we'd get a server error. Multiple locations had problems with desync for the transits and the transit networks. There was also a bug that made you unable to use plotted routes in the star map to get a precise location from planet orbit. The focus was on the hangars, and most people, from what I could see in the chats, were having a problem even getting to the hangars this time around. They did add a nice inventory container icon for you to see a little bit better. It made it help. It's not a big deal. They reduced vehicle laser damage by 10% in this patch. Again, I don't think anybody got to a point where they could try that out. They added to the Vulcan performance, so now it'll reuse the GPU buffer instead of recreating it, so it improves performance. And they fixed a bunch of network problems, 30k problems, problems rejoining the persistent universe, options for repair and refuel and restock being unavailable, quitting the client could break the exit bed interaction. That's been fixed. Not being able to enter text chat in the mobiGlas app, that was fixed. And they fixed 8 client crashes and 4 server crashes. Now, my actual experience in the game, in this build, was mostly crashes, to be very honest. The first build that came out for me, and this kind of seemed to be the experience of the other Evocati, was that this patch was much worse than the prior patch. Now this is obviously, they focused on the back end a bit more, but in the time that I was playing, I had at least a minimum of 6 server errors where you would just freeze in place. You could still chat, and eventually the server would come back up. But what would almost inevitably happen after that point would be you'd get teleported out of your hangar, even if you had even managed to get there in the first place. If you were in your hangar and you weren't trespassing or anything, you were just in your hangar, you get teleported into the middle of the planet. Or you get teleported back to the ASOP terminals in the spaceport, just suddenly and out of nowhere. Your only recourse, if you got to the middle of the planet, obviously was to backspace and respawn. If it sent you back to the ASOP terminals, well, you could try to get back in, but what I found is that every time that happened, within 2 minutes or so, we'd have a 30k and the whole server would crash. Try out another shard. Rinse and repeat. This was an incredibly unstable build from my perspective. I had just as many 30ks, if not a couple more, than the server errors. A 30k actually caused me to lose my hangar at one point. I had to reload the entire game. I had a hangar, got teleported out, 30k'd out, rejoined from the main menu, and when I went back, not only did I not have the ship that I had summoned, but I also didn't have a hanger at all. This only happened once, but it did happen. I had to restart the game entirely. I did manage briefly to get the freight elevator working and run a couple more tests on that. I was able to call items up. I had a couple of items stored in a SCU crate, and that worked out fine, and I was able to loot that crate to take the items out. But when I put a weapon on the freight elevator just to have it come up, I could not pick it up off the floor. When I sent it back down, it would go back to the warehouse and I could pull it out of the item bank. But if you brought it up in the freight elevator, just a weapon lying on the floor, the weapon was unusable. I also had a vehicle without... If you summoned a vehicle while there was one already on the pad, I wanted to see what would happen. So I had a rented Constellation Andromeda on the landing pad in the hangar with an Apoa Nox in it. I was able to call up a Nox first, which did not set off all the lights and the klaxons and the floor going on. It was instantaneous. It just appeared in the middle of the floor. I moved it off to the side, summoned the Andromeda, which also just appeared. So the elevator floors were not working in the hangars, but I was able to put the Apoa Nox onto the ship, close it up, and that was all fine. But I wanted to see what would happen if I summoned another vehicle, because it should have just lowered the one vehicle, the Constellation, and then brought the new one up. What it did was absolutely destroy. No explosion or anything like that. It just, the ship with the Nox in it disappeared instantly, and the only option I had to get it back was to claim it as if it was destroyed. You couldn't resummon it or anything like that, and before I could do anything else, I once again crashed. So in any case, I will say this, that the item bank was working better than the last patch. It was a bit smoother. I didn't have as many items as some others, so I didn't experience those massive frame drops. It was easy enough to move things back and forth from the warehouse to the drawer to install them. When I installed a helmet, it put it into the drawer automatically, and when I backed away from the item bank drawer, the kiosk, it put that helmet automatically back into the warehouse. Like that worked well enough. Calling up the ship again worked well enough, other than no animations. Again, the biggest problem with this patch was just the sheer instability of it. It was kind of crazy. It was pretty constant, almost by the minute. If any of you have played the game enough to know the rough timing of getting from the hab to your hangar in Area 18, you go down the elevator, take the tram, go through the elevator at the spaceport to your hangar. It takes a few minutes. Pretty much within 5 minutes of being in the hangar, we would have a server error or a crash. So I don't think we're going to see this going to Open PTU this weekend. I know this is just a temporary build. It's not going to run all weekend as far as we know. Don't expect this to go to live over the weekends, folks, or even Open PTU, Wave 1 PTU. This is wildly unstable right now. So here's hoping that the next patch that they put out will improve the stability, and if it does, you can be sure that I will let you know. In the meantime, this has been a quick Star Citizen update. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, thumbs down if not. Subscribe if you're new to help me grow the channel. Until next time, I've been Rage at Games, and I'll see you in the verse.